Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and remember to subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon. Interpreting more what has been said and re-listening to the earnings call, I think I've established in my head what I think a likely roadmap of the company will be, judging by what we were told. I think this roadmap might bring us to about 2025. I think it would be nearly obtuse to try and predict what a post-2025 Tesla might resemble, but up to then, I can't see Tesla launching any new vehicles. Possibly not even the Cybertruck, Roadster or Semi. Let's review the roadmap. Now the roadmap is based on what I think would be most in line with the mission, going by the recent information we have been told. The mission being what would transition us off fossil fuels the fastest. It is obvious that we need all sorts of different EVs for all sorts of varieties of utility, application and lifestyle, but Tesla really only make two in any decent quantity. Therefore, it would be axiomatic to assume that more variety of vehicles would help transition us faster, to thus serve more applications. But this would only be necessary if there was more supply than what Tesla currently offer, which there is not. We know, however, what will replace the most ICE vehicles. It's robotaxis. As we talk about how a robotaxi can replace the equivalent of 5 vehicles. Not only does this replace the most ICE vehicles, it is also the most profitable to Tesla and lowest cost to the consumer. If you think the profits from the EV business are high, they're pale in comparison from any potential robotaxi profit. Now, if there is enough demand for just the 3 and the Y, especially when we factor in the extra demand that will come from the 4680 specifications, and then the additional demand from FSD, and then the additional demand for robotaxis, well, I think that could take us to 2025, and we still have no need for any new models, due to there being plenty of demand still for the 3 and Y. It's easy to get caught up in thinking more models is better for Tesla, or even better for the consumer. The market likes hearing about new products too. But if you add an additional model, then you may make 1 million more vehicles a year from this model, but it might be at the cost of making an additional 2 million more Model 3s and Ys. The trick is to just find more and more demand for the 3 and Y by adding more and more features to the car, improving specifications, major software updates, self-driving and application. This would then take demand until robotaxis are able to grow. This will help demand because every Tesla may suddenly be worth $25,000 a year in robotaxi income. So imagine the demand for Teslas then. Why would someone need to spend $25,000 on a compact Tesla when you can make that much a year? We don't need compact robotaxis. We never did. Alright, I've explained why Tesla will continue to have tons of demand just for the 3 and Y for some time. Therefore, here is the roadmap. The Model Y long range and performance is the first vehicle Tesla will ramp up to really meet demand. This is the highest profit margin vehicle of the mainstream models. Therefore, it makes sense to have plenty of these for sale. Perhaps a 4680 Model Y long range might cost $65,000, but have a range of 360 miles. The profit from each vehicle could be $35,000 to $45,000. Then if they add FSD on top of that, there is even more profit again. Anyway, this is a huge amount of profit per vehicle you sell. Tesla will ramp up as many of these as they possibly can, perhaps 1 million, and maybe slowly drop the price down from $65,000 to $59,000 until the market clearing price has been set, where perhaps waiting lists are only about 1 month. Perhaps 1 million Model Y long range and performance deliveries from Texas, and 500,000 from Berlin. Remember, Berlin will be able to offer more affordable prices too, due to no import tariff that Shanghai was facing, and of course all the additional transportation costs. There will, however, be higher cost of labour, but this could again be offset by the new manufacturing techniques. All in all, I do expect the cost per vehicle to be lower in Berlin than Shanghai. If Tesla was selling 1.5 million 4680 long-range Model Ys a year globally, then Tesla must be close to around $60 billion gross profit a year. This rate is possibly hit sometime in 2023, and FSD should hopefully be available, which should help maintain this high demand. But this is just the top of the totem pole. We're still constrained by batteries. So Tesla are only selling their highest margin mass vehicle, and perhaps it saturates at around 1.5 million vehicles, likely sometime next year. This would likely mean that the current Berlin factory is at full capacity, for lack of better word, but there is a new Berlin factory extension that has likely just opened around this time. As for Texas, there is still plenty of room there, even if Austin is producing 1 million Model Ys. With this spare factory space in Texas and Berlin, the next phase, I believe, once Model Y long range and performance have reached saturation, can you guess the next version that be scaled up to meet the market? I think it will be the Model 3 long range and performance. This will be a structural 4680 battery pack, front and rear die-cast Model 3. Again, it might do similar numbers as to what the Model Y was doing. Bear in mind, we now have a long-range Model 3 that is possibly hitting 400 miles of range. With these new batteries, there's going to be so much demand. Then about this time, FSD should be a lot safer than a driver and perhaps legally allowed to be used. This will boost demand even further. Tesla may double down further on the Model 3 and Y. Remember, I've only spoken about Berlin and Texas. Throughout this whole time, Tesla China will continue to be expanding as fast as CATL can produce batteries for them there, specializing in the lower cost standard range models. I own one of these vehicles that came from China, and they are still incredibly impressive. I believe Fremont may just end up serving the standard range Model 3 along with S and X. Anyway, as we climb further down the totem pole, we have the standard range Model Y that could potentially be ramped up and saturated into the market. Then we have the Model 3 standard range. I would say both of these vehicles will have to wait until around 2024 when Tesla has scaled up their own in-house LFP batteries or other non-nickel batteries. But then at the bottom of the totem pole is the compact $25,000 Tesla. This car is looking less and less likely to be necessary. These customers could just use robotaxis instead. Tesla could serve them more efficiently this way. Tesla is making transport cheaper, not necessarily the price of EVs cheaper. As Tesla progress more and more into robotaxis, I see less and less need for a compact Tesla. Put it another way, Tesla's first objective is to transition off fossil fuels as fast as possible. This may not best be done by offering an affordable EV to the masses. The demand for the 3 and Y is strong enough to sustain ramping for long enough until FSD comes along, thus increasing demand further to meet the further ramping up. Whether this demand will last long enough until robotaxis are in fruition is yet to be seen, but perhaps this will all be done with Model 3 and Y with 4680 batteries for now. If robotaxis are not ready in time to further support demand for long-range models, then a standard range version of the Model Y will likely be released and ramped up to meet demand, as it is the next most profitable car. After that would be further Model 3 standard range ramping. This would possibly involve price reductions to increase demand to this level, taking margins to what could have been in excess of 50%, perhaps down to 40%. And that's likely without FSD, i.e. Tesla will sell whichever cars they can make abundantly that have the most profit. So that's a long way down the totem pole until you even begin to think about a $25,000 Tesla. And we haven't even mentioned the Cybertruck, which should be before then too. This means that it is likely Tesla reach robotaxis before there ever needs to be such a demand boost to have to offer a $25,000 Tesla. And if you did offer such an affordable EV, then these same people will instead have to take a robotaxi as they can't afford a Model 3 or Y. In other words, a $25,000 Tesla would have cannibalized robotaxis and possibly quite a bit. The economics of owning a $25,000 Tesla could also be argued that it was as cheap as a bus. In fact, for that reason alone, it is good enough reason to not ever offer a $25,000 Tesla. They don't need to do it. Also, think of all the hassle and stress of trying to make a $25,000 Tesla, and effort and resources that could be applied to future growth. It's likely exponentially harder to make an EV that much smaller. A robotaxi is a low-cost enough form of transport. Robotaxis are where the money is at, and where Tesla is focusing on the most. And if you think about it, then of course Model 3 and Y are a better form of robotaxi. We often think as if we just need to get simply the lowest cost of transport we possibly can, but sometimes good enough is good enough. If a robotaxi ended up doing 1 million miles in its life, then that would be perhaps a saving of 1 cent per mile compared to the cost of a compact. I think we can estimate that we are already at a low enough cost, and the difference of having a 3 or a Y compared to a compact for passengers is well worth it. Plus, a compact will likely not have as long a range as a Model 3 or Model Y. Of course, all the added complexity of having to add an entirely different vehicle that people often only buy for fuel savings in the first place anyway, it just seems like a compromise for everyone. But the added complexity, then it means a lot of new different parts and processes. The 3 and Y already share a lot of the same parts. Perhaps eventually they will share the front and rear die-cast molds and structural battery packs, and there'll be less different parts for each of them over time. The compact would be of a different size and not be able to benefit from these same economies of scale. Therefore, I think the roadmap is relatively simple. Continue ramping Model Y and 3 and make sure there are enough batteries to do so. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.